It's an age-old mystery that has gripped the world for more than a century. Jack the Ripper, the mysterious serial killer whose identity has long remained a mystery.
That is.
Until now.
Yeah. DNA from a shawl recovered at the scene of one of his crimes has incredibly found a 100% match.
Jack the Ripper has long been a figure of terror in true crime lore, symbolizing the brutality of the Victorian era. Since 1888, when 5 women were murdered in Whitechapel, the killer's identity has remained a mystery, with various suspects emerging over the years. Recently, a controversial claim has gained traction, bolstered by new scientific evidence. A stained shawl, thought to be linked to one of the victims, has yielded genetic material allegedly matching Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant and mentally ill barber. This revelation potentially illuminates the Ripper's identity and raises unsettling questions about how close law enforcement may have come to solving the case. A killer in the shadows.
So the name of the murderer, which has always been known, the name is Aaron Kosminski.
Oh.
He was a Polish immigrant Jew that came over to Whitechapel in 1881 with his brother. And he was 23 at the age of the murders.
The autumn of 1888 was one of fear and dread in London's East End. In the dark alleys of Whitechapel, 5 women were murdered in horrific fashion, throats slashed, organs removed, and bodies left mutilated in ways that shocked even hardened police officers. The victims, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, were all poor and living on the margins. The press soon gave the killer a name, Jack the Ripper. With no forensic science available at the time and a public gripped by fear and sensational journalism, the investigation became chaotic and overwhelmed by false leads. From the beginning, the killer's apparent medical precision drew suspicion. Investigators believed the murderer possessed at least some anatomical knowledge. This theory helped focus attention on individuals with medical or surgical training. Dozens of suspects were named and discarded over the years, including everyone from aristocrats to butchers, doctors, and foreign immigrants. Among them was a 23-year-old Polish barber named Aaron Kosminski, who lived in Whitechapel and had a documented history of mental illness. Police reports from the time reference him as a suspect, yet no charges were ever brought. As the murders ceased abruptly in November 1888, so did any chance of closure. The files grew cold, and the legend of Jack the Ripper began to eclipse the realities of the case. Theories flourished, books were written, and the Ripper became a cultural symbol more than a real person. What he did, how he did it, and who he was remained chillingly unanswered. The surviving evidence was minimal, and key items, such as letters purportedly written by the Ripper, were widely dismissed as hoaxes. Yet one object, long dismissed as peripheral, began to draw renewed attention in the 21st century. A silk shawl, allegedly found beside Catherine Eddowes' mutilated body, had been passed down through generations and eventually surfaced in the hands of a private collector. Its authenticity was heavily debated, with many historians arguing that its connection to the crime scene was questionable. Still, it presented a tantalizing opportunity. If real, and if it retained biological material, it could be the only surviving link to the killer himself. That possibility fueled a controversial scientific investigation. The shawl was eventually purchased by British businessman and amateur ripperologist Russell Edwards in 2007, who sought to use modern forensic techniques to extract any traces of DNA. Partnering with Dr. Jari Luhelainen, a molecular biologist at Liverpool John Moores University, Edwards hoped to gain mitochondrial DNA analysis, technology far beyond anything available in 1888. The goal was simple but ambitious, to answer a question that had gone unanswered for over 130 years. The shawl at the center.
Do you think it would be a court case that could be won?
Yes. Uncontaminated DNA we got, which is always a confusion to most. And His Majesty's coroner has investigated the case, the information that we provided, and immediately said this should be taken to the coroner's court.
The turning point in the investigation came with the examination of the shawl. The item, said to have been taken from Mitre Square, where Catherine Eddowes was found murdered, showed visible signs of blood and other stains. For years, critics argued the garment's provenance was shaky at best. However, Edwards insisted it had been kept in a way that minimized contamination. Once in his possession, he gave the shawl to Llewellyn for analysis. What followed was a process shrouded in both scientific rigor and controversy. Llewellyn claimed to extract mitochondrial DNA from both blood and semen found on the shawl. His analysis allegedly linked the blood to a direct descendant of Catherine Eddowes. More sensationally, the semen DNA was reportedly matched to a descendant of Aaron Kosminski. Llewellyn's collaborator, Dr. David Miller, a specialist in reproductive biology, helped confirm the nature of the biological material. According to Edwards, the DNA match with Kosminski's family line was 100%, a staggering claim that reignited the decades-old debate over Jack the Ripper's identity. Critics, however, were quick to pounce. One of the most significant points of contention lies in the type of DNA used, mitochondrial DNA, which is passed through the maternal line and does not provide the unique identifiers of nuclear DNA. Experts such as Hansi Weissensteiner from Innsbruck University pointed out that mitochondrial DNA is better suited for ruling suspects out rather than confirming them. A match in this case could indicate a relative or thousands of unrelated people sharing the same maternal haplogroup. Another problem was the lack of transparency. The results were not immediately published in a peer-reviewed journal, which caused many to doubt the credibility of the findings. When a version of the research was finally released, it lacked critical data. Instead of presenting the genetic sequences, the authors used a graphic with colored boxes to represent matching DNA segments. Critics, including forensics expert Walter Parson, called the omission of data scientifically irresponsible and questioned why privacy laws were being cited when mitochondrial DNA does not pose a threat to individual identity. Adding to the doubt was the fact that the shawl's chain of custody was murky. No police records definitively place it at the crime scene, and some historians believe it may have been introduced years later. Even Edwards' claim that the shawl had been in the family of a police officer involved in the investigation has not been independently verified. These uncertainties raise a troubling question. Even if the DNA matched, could the sample have been contaminated at any point over the last century? Kosminski, the man.
He was suffering with schizophrenia, that we know. We know when he was admitted into the asylum, Coley Hatch, that his occupation was hairdresser or barber surgeon. So in those days, you had anatomical knowledge, which when you know the case, you know that the murderer must have had anatomical knowledge to commit the crimes that he did.
Aaron Kosminski was not an unfamiliar name in ripperology circles. Born in Poland and immigrated to London with his family, he worked as a barber in the Whitechapel district during the time of the murders. Police records from the late 19th century name him as a suspect, and he was briefly placed under surveillance. According to one 1894 memorandum, Kosminski was seen as a strong candidate for arrest, but a lack of direct evidence prevented authorities from moving forward. He was eventually committed to Colney Hatch Lunatic Asylum in 1891, where he remained until his death in 1919. Contemporary medical records describe him as suffering from paranoid schizophrenia with symptoms that included auditory hallucinations, extreme paranoia, and what one document referred to as solitary vices. His delusions were often violent, and he was reportedly uncooperative and hostile with staff. All of this fits with a modern profile of someone capable of carrying out the Ripper murders. His occupation has also drawn renewed interest. In the 19th century, barbers were often called barber surgeons and received some anatomical training. This detail lines up with the belief that Jack the Ripper possessed a working knowledge of human anatomy. According to Russell Edwards, the surgical precision of the Ripper attacks points strongly to someone with that kind of skill set. He also lived within walking distance of all the crime scenes. Records show he was in the area during the time of the murders. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think Kosminski really was the Ripper? Let us know in the comments section below.